Change your mind, change your money, change your life. I am Coach Rob Lee Simmons, the host of this podcast, and let me be your tour guide to greatness. If I was doing any better, I would be you. Welcome to the Greatness Academy podcast. I have Farah Harris. She is a belonging and workplace well-being expert. She's the founder and CEO and a best-selling author of Color of Emotional Intelligence. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I am super excited. So tell me a little bit about your business and how you make magic happen.
Ooh, how I make magic happen. I like that. So, we were just talking a little bit before the show started about us both having ADHD.
Yeah.
So I'm
This is
going to
about to be
try
a
to tell
ride.
the story, but I feel like I can't say one thing without saying the other. So,
sure. It's your show. It's your show.
I am,
just hosting.
We're gonna coast together.
Yeah.
So I'm a psychotherapist, but when I got into the mental health field, I felt that there was a need to go beyond the couch, because before I became a therapist, I was in the corporate world. My husband's still in the corporate world. Many of my friends are in corporate, and my clients that were coming in were professional men and women, and many of their issues and stresses were work related. And I was like, man, I really don't feel like these yet to be United States really does a good job with like creating that work. I like to call it work-life alignment.
Right,
we don't have extended parental leave. We don't have really great policies around grief and bereavement, and all these other things that other nations do have. And I was like, how can I bring up the issues of like mental health, mental wellness within the workplace, going beyond like depression and bipolar, but talking about what mental health is, which is life, right? So when you have kids, that changes how you may show up at work. Especially, I'm a mom of 3. I've had postpartum depression twice. That's going to impact the way that I show up. If you're struggling with like caring for elderly parents, maybe there's someone who has onset dementia and now you're a caregiver, that's going to impact how you show up in the workplace. When you've been demoted or promoted, like even that can be exciting with a promotion, but that still brings some stress. Like, am I doing the job the right way? Right. So I said, I want to create a company that addresses like well-being holistically, to understand that these human beings that come to the workplace are also coming with their own stuff, and that we need to do a better job within the workplace for them to be able to still thrive and show up and be their best selves. And then, as time progressed, as my business Working Well Daily has grown, also adding these other stressors that people don't think about, like racism, sexism, bullying and harassment, and all those things that can impact us at work. So my whole thought is, we spend the majority of our life working, why not work well? So hence how Working Well came about.
No, that's good. So I know that you have a bachelor's in economics and marketing. Did you use that prior to going into therapy? And then do you feel like your experience in the workplace really impacted how you work now?
That's a good question. I often say that I feel that God is the chief recycler. Like, there's nothing in our life that gets wasted. And so, sometimes people feel hesitant to pivot. But I used my bachelor's to get my first, big girl job. So I worked at a retail marketing consulting agency, and that it was great until it wasn't. So it was a very flat organization. It was like me, the office manager, and the senior partners. Farah wasn't about to be no senior partner anytime soon in her 20s. And so I was like, what am I actually working towards? What am I doing? So I recognized how even a good job, because it was everything that I wanted, the pay was great. My colleagues were great, a colleague, the office manager, and, my bosses were great. but I caught myself finding reasons not to go to work
Mm,
because I got bored and I wasn't being challenged. And again, there wasn't really a clear career path. And then again, watching my husband, who is in currently in the banking industry, but back then when we were married, he was in the insurance industry, and being one of the few Black men in his space, I recognized, okay, I see how work is showing up for you with the stress of how do I show up as a Black man? How do I show
right.
up as my authentic self? But those degrees are still helping me now. It's like the marketing degree that I have, being able to, people are like, wow, your post, the way that you're even marketing your book is great. And I'm like, yeah, it's me, the Trinity, and Chat GBT that are
Yeah, exactly.
helping my business grow right now. But I have to tap back into because I did dabble with graphic design, all that stuff. So I don't believe anything is wasted. I think what has got me to where I am is my emotional intelligence, like asking myself these two questions, how do I feel and what do I need? So if I'm in a place that, this isn't filling my cup, this isn't sparking something in me, what is it that I need right now? Well, maybe I need to change my major, or maybe I need to shift a position. Maybe I need to leave the organization, altogether. But I had to ask myself those questions. Otherwise, I would have been stuck and frustrated and unhappy.
So I left out a really big part, right? So like in the beginning, I said, she's just the author, but I didn't say international best-selling author. Wow, like, and first of all, again, I'm always honest with my listeners. I dabbled in the book. I didn't finish it. I'll get there, I promise. But captivating. So tell me about the book. How did it come along? And then give me a little bit of what EQ is and
Yeah.
how we should, apply it to our everyday lives.
Yeah. So I often say when people ask about the book, it was not a labor of love. This isn't one of them stories like, I always felt a book was in me and I just needed to get it out. Yeah, no. I say that was an act of obedience.
Oh, that's good.
um, there were several times where I was like, the world don't need this book. I'm good. I'm good. Like, I want my sanity. I don't want to feel burnt out. I want my time.
Right.
But really, the whole concept of the book was birthed from a training I had already been doing. So in 2020, a I will keep their name nameless, but let's just say, a Fortune 500 company had reached out. Obviously, we had COVID, and we also had the summer where the murder of George Floyd. So we were having, can we have some healing sessions for our Black employees? And I was like, I don't really want to do that
Right.
because yes, I want to hold space for them, but I also want to acknowledge that I can't heal them in a place that they're continuously harmed.
Mm,
So, this organization in particular had already had many people come in, talk to their Black employees. I said, what would be different? Like, you've already had therapists come, so they've talked about self-care. Like, what impact can I make? Because impact is a very important value to me. So I don't want it to be repetitive.
right.
And at that time, we were still inside. Outside hadn't outside yet. So
We ain't
this
outside at this point, right?
we still inside because of COVID. And this company in particular makes a lot of its money from outside events.
Mhm.
And I was watching them not make any money. And so I said, eventually you probably are going to have some layoffs. There's going to be some reorganization. Has anybody come and talked to your employees about emotional intelligence? Because they need to be agile, they need to be resilient, they need to be able to manage all of this change. And she goes, oh, no, no one's ever done that, but I really want you to talk to our Black employees. I said, okay, we can do that, but are your Black employees also aware that they're using their emotional intelligence differently, and that they're being very socially aware to
Mm,
make sure that they're not causing any discomfort to their predominantly white colleagues, that they're using their EQ? She's like, nah. So I'm just talking off my neck. I'm just going to be honest with y'all listeners. Like, And Robert probably even understands this. As a person with ADHD, we can riff.
Oh yeah, we can go. We can
And
go.
we can just off the dome be like da 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 da. And then what do you think about that? That's brilliant. Okay, let me do that then. So I didn't have the training until we had that conversation.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I was like, oh, you like that? I like the way that sounds too. Let me go ahead and put that together. And so created the training, had it. I wanted it to be done in mixed company. And she said, no, I really want it just to be the Black employees. And I promise you, so many people in the comments, because again, we were still inside, so this was a virtual event, were like, man, I wish our white colleagues were on here. And I was like,
right.
they need to know how we are showing up. They need to know what code switching is. They need to understand all of these things, so that they can stop creating these environments where we feel we need to do that. And then people started asking for it, because I had like shared on LinkedIn, like, hey, the color VQ. I had a picture, of course. It's a virtual event, so there's no photographer showing me in front of a group of people. So it's like me and my selfie, like holding up my computer screen. Like, here's the introduction of my presentation. But people would see the cover and was like, man, that's an interesting title. What is this about? And more organizations would ask for it. It started to be done, in mixed company, which is what I initially wanted. And since people kept asking for it, I said, well, maybe there's a book here. And so how I lay out the book is literally how I laid out the talk, which is about 90 minutes. And the first part of the book is what I call emotional intelligence in black and white. It's, if you've never read anything about emotional intelligence, you have no clue what that skill set is. I break it down for you so that we're on even playing field.
Right.
And then part two is what I call emotional intelligence in color. So this is where I talk about racial trauma. This is where I talk about all the different types of inequities that have us show up differently and using the skill differently. So whether it's because of your gender, whether it's your disability, the microaggressions we experience, all of those things. And then the last part I call for allies, but it's written in a way where it's kind of looks like it says for all. So anyone really that wants to make the world a better place, here's how you can use your EQ or your emotional intelligence to be more intentional with how you show up and how you create safe spaces. So that's in essence the book.
No, that's beautiful. So and the way that the book is laid out, again, I didn't get through all of it, but I'm a skim reader, so I know how to. So there's a piece in there that I believe that was just masterfully done, right? Walking the dog, right? I learned so much about myself because that dog walked me so much that my wife said, you got to do something about that because and reading that it made me realize that I am not as emotionally intelligent as I thought. So tell me about controlling your emotions.
Yeah. Do you have a dog?
I don't, but I would tell you this. I used to have a boxer. It was actually a black boxer. And his name was Ali, black boxer Ali. And he's big dog. And I knew my brother's a dog trainer. So from me being young, I knew that if you let the dog walk ahead of you, then he's gonna think that he's in charge. So he needs to be, y'all need to be kind of together.
Yeah.
But then, when you broke it down, it was just like, okay, now yeah.
I don't own a dog.
Yes,
But
it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Thank you so much. I always ask because those who do own dogs are like, oh my gosh, this metaphor was like so spot on. And so to the audience in I want to say chapter 3, I could be lying.
It's 2 or 3. Yeah.
Okay. Where I kind of coined this term walk the dog as a great analogy for what emotional intelligence is that exactly what Robert says. We don't want our emotions to be leading us, to the point where, we have this like immediate reaction. Sometimes it's the it's not always anger, because then it can also be those people who wear their hearts on their sleeves, right? They're just,
Right.
quickly get into relationships, that kind of stuff. And so when I was watching The Dog Whisperer, again, I feel like reality television just has some kind of like hold on us that we watch things that have nothing to do with our lives.
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Like,
all right, let me
it's
look
like,
at your life.
hey, let me watch this. It's interesting. So like Caesar Milan, he's telling them like, yo, you need to make sure that your dog understands that it's not the pack leader. And so in your house.
Right,
So
right,
like,
right, right, right.
so you don't want the dog to be in front of you because that way it thinks that it's leading. You don't want it to be behind you because it could mean, that one, you're just not paying attention, or two, that there's not like the best relationship. It's a very passive dog. You want to be like lockstep with it. And I was like, man, that's exactly what I feel as emotional intelligence looks like in practice, where we're not letting our emotions guide us, that we are in real time going, man, I feel some type of way. Can I
Right,
name what that type of way is? I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling anxious. And not letting that emotion cause us to react where we popping off on somebody, cussing somebody out, or cutting somebody off and go into silent mode. Cause some of us do that. We'll sit there and be like, bet I ain't gonna say nothing to you,
right,
so then
right,
they do
right, right.
silent treatment, right? Or we're very passive aggressive and we're like, it's totally okay, knowing it's not okay. We want to be in real time, be able to name it, and then be able to go, oh, well, what brought this on? And so that's when I go into those 3 A's. Like, I'm aware of the feeling, so I can name it, but then I need to be able to assess what even brought this feeling, and I'm not the most morning person type of mama. So my
Right,
kids have learned early on, like, don't ask me a million questions. I
right,
don't even need coffee. I just need a moment. So like, give me a moment, let me eat.
right.
I
Let me
am
get
very
back in
much like the
balance.
Snickers commercial. You are just not yourself. Like, no, I need to eat. Give me a moment.
Right.
But what I also try to let people know is that even when you show up, how can I say it, in a low EQ type of way, like you're very short, you may be, sarcastic, whatever. When you're able to practice those 3 A's of like being aware, assessing, and then now addressing it, the addressing part goes to the last two parts of EQ. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. Of the relationship management part, which includes like effective communication. So I can be a snippy mom and the kids can be coming, but because I recognize like I haven't had breakfast yet, I now can articulate it because I'm like able to assess, like, man, why am I being so short with these kids? And it's not their fault. I can then go, mommy hasn't eaten yet, which is why mommy has an attitude.
Right.
Can you give mommy like 15 minutes? That can completely diffuse the situation where the kids are no longer feeling like, rejected, or, I'm being mean. They have an understanding as to why,
Right.
and I can
Right.
apologize for the behavior, but they also have clarity as to, oh, she's showing up this way because dot, 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 dot. And I feel
Right.
that's so important, even in the workplace. Like, if you show up as your not best self, especially if you're a leader, and go, hey, in that meeting when I cut you off, it's because, and then fill in the blank, whatever that stress was. I apologize for that. Please tell me what it was that you were going to say. Just being able to do that
Yeah, that's a big
can
deal.
change the whole game, from somebody thinking that you're a complete jerk and jackass to, oh, they are self-aware enough to know when they're actually off,
For
and
sure.
then can come back, apologize, and then like regroup. So emotional intelligence, I say, simply is being able to know yourself and read the room, and there's like 4 main pillars of self-awareness, which includes emotional awareness. So naming the feeling, recognizing how it shows up in your body, self-regulation or self-control, self-management, and then that has to do with you. And then the part that has to do with others is the social awareness. So that's being able to empathize with other people, see their perspective. And then the relationship management, which is what I just talked about, effective communication, being motivating, inspiring, knowing how to diffuse conflict. All of those things fall under that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing because, I mean, if you're able to put this together, and I think not even just as a white person or a black person, I think anybody who's able to actually put these skills together, have some self-awareness and have social awareness on the outside of that, that can make a magnificent leader. How big of an impact do you think it is for people to have that type of balance in their arsenal as leaders?
I just feel, and I stated in the book, I was frustrated with all the content around emotional intelligence being called a soft skill. I'm like, there ain't nothing soft about it.
At all.
Because it takes, and I call it a strength skill because it takes strength not to cuss somebody out.
Oh,
Like
for
it,
sure. No question.
like the way that you really want to react, yeah, to go, wait a minute, is this the best? Is this the best way that I want to respond versus how I react? It's transferable. So it helps you be a better partner, it helps you be a better parent, but then definitely in the professional space, it helps you show up as a leader to not just be authoritative and dogmatic, but you actually are able to create a space where people go, oh, I can be heard. You're going to ask me questions. You're going to try to see my perspective. You're going to make sure that there's minimal conflict within our team. I say a leader that has high EQ doesn't allow low EQ to fester in a team. So if someone's bullying, someone's microaggressing other folks, harassing other folks, like, you nip that in the bud. Like, we don't do that here. They're not passive. Someone who's practicing high EQ, I call it that, your emotional quotient, is assertive. They're not trying to dictate. They're not being passive. They're being very direct, with kindness and grace. And who wouldn't want to work with the leader that shows up that way?
Yeah, so you talk about microaggressions. I kind of want to shift to kind of cultural differences in the workplace, and how that social balance kind of works out for people of different races. Like, and I want to go from your perspective of how you wrote the book, and then I guess I have a question, but so tell me about
The brain is like,
yeah, it's going everywhere. So let's take a let's take a step. I want to say backwards.
yeah.
I'm an alpha man, no backward steps. So let's go forward and talk about microaggressions and other things that people of different races face. Let's talk about the color of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. I don't like the word microaggressions. In the chapter that I talk about it, which I want to say is chapter 10, which is titled Paper Cuts. Micro words matter. So when we hear the word micro, we think small. And so
right.
we think it may be insignificant. When the person on the receiving end, after you call them stupid, after you belittled them, after you chastise them, whatever, that hurts. And the way that our brain operates is that whenever we feel not just slighted, but any type of rejection, because that's really what it is. If someone's calling you names, they're not making you feel welcomed. Our brain processes it as physical pain, like that part of the brain that lights up when you stub your toe or you get hit. That's what we get every time we are microaggressed. And so those of us who've been intentionally or unintentionally pushed to the margins because of our race, because of our gender, sexuality, disability, whatever, we realize we're trying to manage and navigate these spaces where we know that microaggressions are like just waiting for us. So if you're a woman and you walk in a predominantly male space, you might be, there's that term mansplained, you try to explain something and the dude is like, no, I don't have that correct. Actually, and you'd be like, no, I know what I'm saying is right. But to minimize discomfort, to minimize potential harm, a woman might let the man mansplain and just go, I'm sorry, you know what, Robert, you're right. And that's like that social awareness. Like, I'm aware that you may feel like I'm possibly emasculating you or whatever if I restate my position. So I don't want you to do that, because unfortunately the world is not safe for women. So I don't know how you're going to retaliate. I don't know if you're going to retaliate by talking to the guys on the golf course, and now I no longer have support and advocacy for my promotion. I don't know if you're going to, after this, physically assault me. So that those experience of microaggressions for women have us navigate in a different way, where we're either I say we butch it up, we put some deepness in our voice when we talk to show that we're just as powerful, or we may play into our femininity and go like, let me do this damsel in distress, whatever it is to make the man comfortable. If you are a Black person, we call it code switching within our community, where we're showing up. I like to call it the customer service representative voice. All of a sudden we're talking like this. Yes, I'm so happy to help you, Heather. And that may not be how you talk.
Right, exactly.
And so you may change your tone, you may change. Brothers, I see brothers walk differently in the office versus how they are walking when they're, amongst their friends. And it's something that, especially within the African American community, was like, I call it, this transgenerational learning. So back during the time of enslavement, you couldn't be educated. You couldn't directly talk to a white person. You couldn't look a white man or a white woman in the face. So you had to cower, you had to play dumb, and you had to present yourself in this lowly way. And even though after whatever, we'll claim this Emancipation, proclamation, we still see that. We may hear from our grandmother or auntie, like, oh, you're gonna relax your hair, you're gonna straighten your hair, before the interview. Like, you can't go up into an interview with your natural hair. Like, you can't do that. Like little things like that, where it's like, you want to show up. And I challenge this in my book too, like what we define as professional. And so white people view professionalism based off of their own system.
Right.
And we sit here going like, I'm professional because I know what I'm doing. So why would it matter what my hair looks like if I can do the job? And so hence why we got to create laws like the Crown Act to sit here and say it's illegal to judge somebody because of their hair texture. And so my ADHD just kicked in. So I feel like I'm
with you, because I was just about to tell you. So I actually just read a Facebook article, and it was a Army article. And big, if you see all of my kids, you check them out on social media. All of them have, they're beautiful crowns, right? Some of them have twisty locks, some of them have thick locks. You seen the younger one come in here? He just
freeform.
Yeah, he just has the free form. Me, I have no hair, so that's why I let him do that. Big fan of the Crown Act, and I just read something, and it was just on Facebook that and I seen a young Black lady cutting her hair because a part of the obstacle was to she couldn't navigate the obstacle without putting her hair up, because it was part of, it was really for safety, but nobody gave her anything to put her hair up or anything.
Yeah.
And she's cutting her hair in this picture. And I see nothing but men saying, that's a brave warrior. That's a warriors make sacrifices. And then I seen one lady's comment that said, why didn't anybody have something for her to tie her hair up with? And I'm thinking to myself, it's just, number one, it's a simple fix. Number two, I've been in the service 14 years. I can find 566 things on my desk right now to wrap her hair up with. So I know damn well out there, anybody could have found anything to do that. And it was just a lack of
awareness.
It was a lack of care. It was a lack of resources. It was a lack of leadership, a lack of the ability to not be truly agile. And that's what we are. We are a very agile force. And in a moment where you say what you say goes is bogus when you know how to be agile. I think it's just bogus. And it's crazy because I think the biggest part about code switching and then actually being socially aware, and then probably that kind of leads into my question: how do we teach other people to be aware of things that they are not educated on?
That's a very good question. And I try my best to address this in the book, which is why I felt like I couldn't do the book nor the training, service if I didn't start with the black and white, just like basic understanding of like, maybe you struggle with certain emotions because your family of origin never processed feelings,
Right.
or how they presented feelings were a very aggressive type of way, or it was like everything is under the rug. We don't talk about it. We don't ruffle no feathers, whatever. So there's some grace that I do give where I think people may want to show up better, but they just don't know how because they've never learned, So when you're in a household where you're telling your son, man up, don't cry, walk it off or whatever. And then we're asking for, and again, this, as I shared earlier, like this book was birthed from a training that got birthed because of COVID and everything. So we're in a time where there was so much grief because people were dying. People are still dying from COVID.
Right.
People were also grieving connection, so folks were scared. They didn't know what was going on. So they didn't see family for a long period of time. If they weren't partnered and they were living alone, then they were feeling these periods of isolation. So then we're talking about the workplace who were still like, but we still got to get these widgets. We still got to make these donuts.
Right.
So,
Right.
let's figure out this work thing. And it's like, well, can you empathize with the fact that, people are working at home and try to manage these kids who are now homeschooling or, remote learning? What is that? While I got to cook dinner, while I got to support, and depending on the house, do you even have a separate office space, to be able to do these things? And we're asking men, and I'm not trying to, stereotype, but we're asking these men that ideally we've told them as parents or as society, y'all can't cry, y'all can't have tender emotions, but now I need you to be tender and empathetic in this season.
Yeah. Like
Like
how Sway. You ain't got the answer,
how?
Sway.
How, right? Work and it doesn't. And the same thing for women, even though there's kind of like a pass for little girls crying, but then they hit a certain age and it's like, is it that time of the month?
Right.
Is she going through her time and with mood swings or whatever? And it's like, we're not even giving space for men or women to have tender emotions.
Right.
And so I felt like in the first part of the book, like, let's just talk about that. Let's talk about what your family taught you, what society has taught you, what you learned in different social systems. So now we get to this point where we're in the workplace or we're in the academic space. And to your point of like people just not being aware of stuff, now that I've given you the skills, like, let's slow down a little bit. Let's ask ourselves, am I being curious? So when we think about like that cultural awareness piece, this woman come in, I think I give this example in the book, like she come from a Caribbean background, which I also come from. So she can get very loud and animated. And your view of professionalism as, from a very male, hetero, white lens is that a woman shouldn't be this passionate or dynamic. She's angry or she's aggressive or whatever. And we've seen this, like when you think about, man, I wish I put this in the book, but with Serena Williams and how she evokes her emotion. Oh, she a hothead. She don't know how to, handle herself. And I'm like, but there's these white dudes that are slamming rackets, cussing folk out.
Same
and
thing.
they're like, they're passionate. And it's like, oh, okay, why are we seeing it that way? Why are we not being curious enough and equitable in the way that we understand the expression of emotions? And so when we think about code switching, and I call it code switching by another name because it's really masking. So it's not just we change the way that we speak, but we're changing the way that we show up. Those of us who are disabled, you and I being neurodivergent, there may even be ways where it's like, man, I'm trying to keep myself together to not be impulsive and not cut in their conversation. Or, if you got a fidget or whatever, and you're doing all these things because we don't want other people to think we're different. We
Right.
don't want other people to feel like we're uncomfortable. And my challenge in this book is like, can you read the room? Can you check out if there is a possibility that whatever you have in the room is making somebody uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Have you asked them the real questions on are they good? Because it's always interesting after I do these trainings and the comments from, white employees who are like, I
I
never known
didn't
about
know. Yeah.
I never, who
I did
knew? And it's
it.
just like, yeah, Black folks are bringing a representative
Yeah.
of themselves to the workplace. And if you can imagine what that would feel like and you wouldn't want it for yourself, then why are we allowing it for other people?
Well, that's
So I'm
good.
just challenging you to go, I wouldn't want this for myself now that I know, because I'll give you a little grace for ignorance, but now that you know, why are
Right.
you okay that it's happening?
Right. I love it. I love it. And the way you kind of outline the book, it seems as if like it's just a suitcase like a kid pack. And they threw a bunch of stuff in there, they zipped it up, and you're like, all right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna unpack this. We're gonna inventory everything that's in here. We're gonna see what's in here. All right, now that you know it's lined up in here, you have everything you need. All right,
Mm-hmm.
now we're gonna go on vacation and we're gonna have a good time. Don't ask me where your underwear is at, right? And you know what? I think and this is
Completely didn't expect that to be the metaphor analogy, but I'm like, that's
but
good.
that's what's gonna happen. So, well, I don't understand why everybody's angry at me. So, hey,
Mm-hmm.
Jim, we just unpacked the bag. We know that you shouldn't be putting the god doggone swim shorts on in the shower, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
you continue to do. uh, you
Mm-hmm.
know and
That's
i think
good.
it's I think it's really fair to say that some of these things that and I am my wife has told me this. I don't think people can not necessarily unlearn what they know, but attached to what they don't know. For instance, like how it is to be black. You can't
Mm-hmm.
learn that. But I think you learning things that we talked about, learning how to make other people comfortable, asking the right questions, um, and then really having some uh and I seen a couple of my guys do this, and I was proud of them, but they ask the questions. And I say my guys, this is for my coworkers. They will ask the question of, hey Robert, I read about the crown neck. Why is hair so
Why is it?
important? Why should I
Mm-hmm.
not touch her hair? Why, you know what I mean? Those are great questions.
Yeah.
Don't
No.
touch it. Yeah, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Um,
But
and
I
I
feel like that even that question is bringing something up for me about like, and you know this, um, when you are part of the minority group, even though we're part of the global majority,
mm,
but if you walk in the room and you're the only, then you're the minority. Um, we educate and study so well the environment because we're trying to figure out how to survive.
yeah,
And so um when you ask the question, why can't I touch? Well, you're not touching
Bill's
Susie's
here.
hair. Like, why does my hair and granted our hair is beautiful and there's so many different textures
Right.
and volume and all this other stuff, but the lack of boundaries is the part that's like, this is
Mhm.
so interesting to me, that you don't feel we necessarily have agency over our own body, that even your curiosity is like, oh, I mean, and I do feel like this even happens when a woman is pregnant, right? All
Mhm.
of a sudden common sense is no longer common and it's like, oh. And
Let me touch
I
it.
remember when I was pregnant with our oldest, and I was like at a Jimmy John's or whatever, got my order, turned around, this complete stranger, this woman, like both hands, like towards me. And I put my food down and went towards her in the same way. And she looked at me crazy. And I was like, exactly.
Right,
Like, you would never have anybody just grab your abdomen.
right. So why would you do that?
Why would you think I'm okay with you doing that now? Just because it's protruding
Right.
doesn't mean that it's like now more accessible to you. But I just feel like we don't slow down and practice the pause and go, I want to do this, but why do I want to do this? What makes me feel like I should do this or that I can do this? And so it's always surprising, like even if it's something so innocent as going to go touch a Black woman's hair, when she responds with, please don't do that, this is where the EQ comes into play, because oftentimes then all of a sudden it's the Black girl got a problem. She
Right.
got an attitude. Well, that was, I mean, I was just admiring your hair. Like you should appreciate the fact that I actually petted you like you were a chia pet. you
Right,
know?
right.
So I was like, we need to slow ourselves down. Like even when we have a low EQ moment, like reaching for someone's hair, we can turn the page and go, oh, I am so sorry I did cross your boundaries, my apologies, your hair is beautiful, and keep it moving instead of
Right.
like weaponizing tears and now making the person who was aggressed the aggressor.
Yeah.
It's just, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger pieces is, seeing the person who was the victim become the
The
suspect.
villain.
Yeah, like how do we make that happen that fast? But I think just kind of, I mean, the way you're laying this out, man, is poetry in motion. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So let
Thank
me
you.
ask you,
Yeah.
what's next? So what's next? I know that you got a whole lot of stuff going on. What is your focus point, and then what's next?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know.
Yes, I love it.
um, I know, and it's funny. I thought I would have an answer by now. Now that it's been like a month or so since the book came out, um, but I don't. And I know that people ask like, "Oh, is there a book tour? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that?" I already told y'all listeners, it's the Trinity and ChatGPT. Like that's it. That's my team
Right,
right now.
right.
I'm the only one that's really marketing. And I'm grateful to be in this space. Um, but as I said, this was not a labor of love. This was an act of obedience. So I'm really trying to be obedient to my next steps. Until
Mm,
I hear something clearly, I don't like to move. So I have kind of shifted, still marketing the book, obviously, but I'm shifting to just really to all the solopreneurs out there who understand the analogy of like we're building a plane while it's already in the air.
for sure, for sure.
So I'm trying to make sure I'm being more efficient with the plane that has already taken off.
I
So
love
these
it.
next 6 months, I've like dedicated to working with a coach to tighten up, my positioning and all those things, because I do have a great spirit of anticipation for the doors that will open because of this book and because of the work that I do, but I want to be ready. So I would really say that like my next is continued preparation for
Mm,
the next.
that's good. I wish I'd have had this about 2 months ago because I so I wrote a book back in November, and so that's been about 6 months, and I was and like halfway through, and I told you all the stuff that I was doing in before. I realized that the book needed a military edition version, which I probably should have
Mhm.
wrote first, but but yeah, in all of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm now writing a military edition of the book, but I probably need to just like we got this plane going. I probably need to make sure we got brakes before the plane go down. But that I like, man, she should have told me that about 3 months ago. Let me take 4 to 6
It's
months.
scary.
Yeah,
It's scary to
yeah,
be a solopreneur because like it's all on you. I mean,
for
you can
sure,
literally shut it down. Nobody knows.
for sure.
Um, but that we're not built that way. Like we're not going to let the plane crash. We're going to try to make sure we there's a parachute
Right, right.
somewhere
Somewhere
in
in
here,
here.
somewhere in here. And sometimes we try to take off, or we try to accelerate, I should say, maybe too soon before we have, like you said, that the brakes are working and whatnot. And I was blessed that it was like a quick takeoff because of COVID. And then it just kind of just kind of hovered. And I'm
Yeah,
like, we need to move forward, but I needed to move forward well. Like, I don't want to sit here and move forward and then be going to the wrong destination. So I want to make sure that, you know, I'm not even going to try to act like I'm into aviation. So,
No, I get you, but
but you
I'm
know what I'm
with you
saying? Like, I want
100%.
to make sure the quadrants and everything is
Yeah, yeah.
correct. Um, and so that's why, you know, as excited as I am to do this, I'm also like very cautious on like how to do this, because I recall a fellow colleague who wrote a book, really believed it was, you know, divinely downloaded, and then got really frustrated because like all the plans, you know, post marketing just were falling through. And she was getting angry. She's like, I can't believe, you know, I felt like God told me to write this book. And like, now I can't even promote it. And I said, well, did you ask him what you were supposed to do after you wrote the book?
Right. What's next?
And she was like, ooh,
Let me get back with that one.
like you just stepped on my toes. And so I was like, sometimes we will take an idea and run with it before really assessing, like, okay, why was this made? Who is this for? What am I supposed to do with it? Because it could have just been for one person. It could have been to gift clients, you know, we don't know, but we feel like, now I gotta be on every tour, I gotta be on every podcast, I gotta. And I, you know, you got your bunch of kids, mine is a smaller bunch, you know, but I'm like, I've been saying, and I even shared to those who had like signed up on like my pre-launch list, like I didn't want to give my readers a crispy book. Like I didn't want it to be birthed out of burnout. So I took long breaks while I was writing. But my primary ministry is my home. And I'm not about to lose my husband nor my children chasing you know, something just because the iron is hot, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going to trust that I can be able to move with ease, in a spirit of ease, and I will get to where I'm supposed to go when I'm supposed to get there. So I know that's a long answer, but I feel like
Oh, that's beautiful.
For those who are listening, sometimes I feel like we think we need to know what our next is, and sometimes it's like, just be obedient with whatever is on your plate.
No, that's amazing. So, so we're getting closer to that time. So I want to ask you my
Mhm.
favorite question. I usually ask all of my guests on here. So what was the largest purchase that you've ever made, and then how did it make you feel?
I don't know why I struggled with this, but it could be because I'm very frugal.
Mm, that's the best part, where you just like, you know, it meant something to you when you drop something on it.
Yeah. So I'm very frugal, and I'm also not materialistic. So like things don't excite me.
Yeah.
So I had to think about this, and I think the the most expensive thing that I've spent money on is the thing that we are communicating on right now, is my MacBook.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Um, because my entire business is here.
Yeah, I'll say that's a transformative purchase right there.
Yes. And I know it's time for an upgrade. I'm like, come on, baby, just hold on a little while longer, because I know the next one gonna be a little more expensive because of what I'm trying to do. But it was one of those like, no, you're not going to try to get some $150
Yeah,
computer off
you
of
can't make it work.
Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're so I would say like the materials that I've gotten for my business. So the microphone I'm talking on, the MacBook that I'm on, those have been my biggest purchases, because I just now thought about um like cars. They've probably been more expensive, but I can't say that I walked away going like, ah, oh,
So glad I.
I'm so glad that I put money down, or not money down, because my dad has taught me, if you can't buy it, just don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with
He's
cars.
like, buy it cash and that's it. Cars were to get me to where I needed to go, but this computer right here is, yeah,
It's a different vehicle.
it's a different vehicle. It's a vehicle that's helping me go where I'm trying to go.
Well, I love the direction that you're going.
Thank you.
I definitely we're gonna do this again. So I'm so glad I caught you at this part of your journey, because when you get to, you know, over here, you know, I can slide in and like, hey, you remember little old me?
Not little old you. Like we moving together.
Yeah, I'm trying to lock pace with you.
That's
But
what we doing.
thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. Um, On the show, we say that winners win, and when we win, you win, and we want to thank you for being a winner.
Oh, I like that. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
win together. Yes.
Oh yeah, I love it. And so we got to do this again because
Yes, we
I'm
do.
looking at the time, and I know we ran over, but I but I know there's more. There's more.
Most def.
All right. So thank you for jumping on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, and we're out. Boom. Thank you for joining the podcast. And remember, change your mind.